So in the last session, we were talking about the the data management part, right? We talked about how to put data into Salesforce, how to export it, how to delete the data in bulk and all, right? Anyone has any questions from there? I think what we did was simple stuff, so you should not have uh, any questions from there. But in case there is any question, you can just type it in the chat window, and we can discuss about that. In case we do not have any questions from there, then we will move into the next step, which is the data model section. Okay. So in today's session, what we are going to discuss, we will talk more about the components in Salesforce, right? So as we discussed earlier, I guess, that we can use the applications which are available in Salesforce as well as design our own applications, right? That is what we have discussed. We can use the existing applications, we can design our own applications. Just give me a second. Right. So, to design our own application, we need to understand what are the, basically what all the components form an application in Salesforce, right? What all components are there. So today we are going to talk about that. So first thing that we'll have to understand that we have been talking about, right from the first session, that it requires to store data in the backend, right? So at the backend, we do have a database, fine. Whatever we have discussed, campaigns, accounts, contacts, opportunities, these are all what? This is all data. And for each type of data, like for campaigns, I have a table. For accounts, I have a table. For contacts, I have a table, right? So at the back end, what I have a database. Database is what? Collection of tables. That's it, right? So at the back end, we have these tables. In Salesforce terminology, if I say Salesforce components, so one component of that is object or table. So we have objects in Salesforce. Now object, we refer to table as an object in Salesforce, right? So I'll be using the terminology object. Whenever I say an object, you understand that we are talking about a table in the backend, okay? So in Salesforce, we call it object. Now, a table is formed of what? It is formed of rows and columns, right? So columns are called as fields and your rows are called as records. Fine. So three things that we understand that we have in Salesforce. One is objects, one is fields, and one is records. Object means tables, fields means columns, and rows means records. Records means rows, right? So for any database, this is a must. It will be there, right? Apart from this, what else do we have here? We have tables of data, we have fields in the data, and we have the records that is there. Apart from that, we have tabs. Okay, what is a tab? I think Vijay, could you please share your login ID password? I think you regularly share it. Thanks a lot. Okay. So when we log in into Salesforce, we see these tabs. Okay. So tab is basically more of a user interface component. It's more like a button. Clicking on this, you can connect to the table, right? So for connecting to every object, you need a tab on the user interface, right? Because what we are talking about here is that the database that we have or the table that we have is in the backend, right? Is on the server. So how does a user interact with the backend thing? As a user, we do not have access to the backend, right? So what we need to do, we need to create a tab in the interface on the UI, which can help us connect with the table or object, right? So that is a tab basically. So this tab is more of a part of a UI. Okay. So we need to understand that a tab is different from the object. Account can be an object and you can have a tab for account. But tab is a different component and the object or the table at the back end is the different component. So that is about our things here. We have accounts, contacts, leads, opportunities, all these things. And we have tabs. I mean, we have these objects in the backend and we have the tabs for them. The next thing that we have here is an app. So what is an app? App is basically what we see here in this drop down, right? That is what we have discussed. These are the apps. Okay. App is also a front end UI component where you decide which all tabs will be visible under which app. Fine. So this app is also a UI kind of a thing that you design, and you decide which all tabs will be available under which app, right? So to make it a little more simple, let me explain it in this way. When we talk about let's say the backend database, there we have the objects, there we have the data. So we need to store the data in the backend server, right? So we need the objects there, we need the fields, and the records are stored there. So that's one. In the front end, what we need tabs to connect to those objects, right? Now app is basically a UI component which holds a particular collection of tabs, right? And one tab can appear in multiple apps. So there is no such restriction that one tab can appear only once. It can appear in all the apps also. So there is no problem with that. Fine. So basically we have these things. In addition to this, there is one more thing called a relationship that we need to understand. Relationship is basically the relationship between objects. So if there are two objects which need to be connected, a parent-child kind of a relationship needs to be built, those relationships will be there, right? So from the UI side, we have tab and apps. From the database side, we have objects and fields and records, and we have relationships to bind these objects, okay, or to connect the objects. These are the components. Now let us try to understand these things and create these things, but we will not straight away go and start creating it. Let us take a small example and do it. That will be helpful. So